Hello everyone, I hope you're taking it easy and your day has been great thus far. For this video we'll be going through an unboxing and review of the Studio Series Core Class Shockwave, and this particular version of Shockwave is from the Transformers Bumblebee movie. And as for this little figure, he was released at the beginning of 2022 by both Hasbro and Takara Tomy. So I was hoping to do this the other week, since I've done the Legacy Shockwave, but basically here we are now, doing the actual unboxing and review of Studio Series Bumblebee Shockwave. So I don't know why poor Shockwave has been pretty much relegated to all the core classes, but I do have Leader Shockwave from War for Cybertron. So one day I will decide to tackle that, but until then, pretty much doing all these baby Shockwaves. So here we have the box for the core class Shockwave. Nice shot of Shockwave per the Bumblebee movie. And we obviously have Shockwave here, and I believe this would have been the start of the removal of the plastic window, which it's understandable. Don't use what you don't need. Turn to the side, just a little torso, well not torso, but more of a profile shot with the core class, and then a nice CGI instance of Shockwave. That's pretty much the front of the box packaging. I guess if we quickly have a look at the top with the Transformers Bumblebee logo. Turn to the back, so there we have Shockwave, both in his robot mode and his Cybertronian tank mode. 13 steps of conversion, which isn't too bad. Surprisingly, for these core classes, there is actual steps for transformation for some of these. Some have a few more than others, but yeah, interesting to see how Shockwave converts between the two. Now I'm hoping when I open up Shockwave, he is not going to suffer from terrible knee syndrome. I'm finding it a bit hit and miss with the knees on these core classes, so it'll be interesting to see how they basically first started out as, given Shockwave and Ravage from Transformers Bumblebee were some of the first few core classes. Ravage will be done in the future as well, and hopefully maybe not with Soundwave, but around that time, I guess. So I will crack open the packaging for Shockwave, and then we can have a nice look at what is included. And with Shockwave now out of his packaging, so we have the usual manual, which is stock standard, Shockwave himself, his accessory, which I'm actually quite surprised. I'm so used to Shockwave just having one proper arm and an actual weapon arm, so the fact that he has two proper arms and a very hefty looking accessory is very cool. And we also have a little faux background, which I believe is similar to what a lot of the Studio Series from Transformers Bumblebee use as a background. I think I can at least recognize Bumblebee back there. But yes, it's obviously a still from the actual War on Cybertron. And I guess just to have a bit of a quick look, so if I just put Shockwave there, it's not too bad. The scaling is not fantastic. I'm sure it might look a lot better if he was posed against, well, in front of one of the deluxe class backdrops, but the fact that we still get a bit of a pseudo backdrop is still quite impressive. Granted, it does have the holes where the plastic security wires have gone through. So that's the background. I'll probably take a few pictures of Shockwave against it later down the track, but that's pretty much it. And yeah, so we'll just put that away for the time being. So Shockwave, we'll come back to you in a minute, and then same with your accessory. In terms of your manual, So it's pretty much a case of, before we even start the transformation, there will be a step just to show you how to attach his weapon into his hand. Otherwise, in terms of the transformations, looks like we do a few things with your arms, which looks to be just a case of put them to the side, move the legs upwards, fold the feet down, do some stuff in the chest and the waist area with some usual flippies there. And it does look like the feet will basically form the front of his Cybertronian tank. Going on the back, looks like it's pretty much just aligning his hands into the right spot, putting his head away and attaching his main cannon weapon. Very nice. And then we pretty much have a completed Cybertronian mode there. That was the 13 steps. And there's also just a additional image with Shockwave holding his weapon in his other hand. Which makes you wonder, is it just a carbon copy of that front? Not quite. In fact, the transformation, I take it back, is actually removing the weapon as opposed to adding it. It's not that he's adding it in two different hands, it's actually adding it to his head. So that was his 13-step instruction manual. In terms of his accessory, so it's a decent sized accessory for a core class. Previous ones we've looked at, yes, they've had some large weapons. I mean, even core class Shockwave had a large radar dish for a weapon, so it's not unsurprising to have a decently sized weapon. Is it actually going to come into view? Might actually have to block some of it. Two tones on this one, primarily purple with some silver, but the detailing isn't too bad at all. Okay, so that's that. Now if I was to, so there is a little tab in here that you would probably use. I'm just trying to see, does this tab, yes it does. So I've just tabbed it all the way down so it can actually be handheld, and we will pick his left arm, which is traditionally his cannon hand. Now in this case, it's obviously going to give him a very cannon looking hand look. So front on looks pretty decent, side on you can start to tell that it is basically a hand holding a weapon, and then from the back, well, the underside is very much a case of a hand holding a weapon, so it doesn't really wrap over quite nicely, unlike the small weapon that was included with B127. Granted, that's a deluxe, but that looked a lot more integrated into the figure than this one. But difference between core, different between deluxe. So that is the accessory. Not too bad looking. So I just hold Shockwave. And yeah, it looks pretty cool while equipped with his primary weapon. Now, we'll take that off and put it to the side. And by the way, there's no other moving parts on that. So that's his weapon looked at in terms of Shockwave. So, front of Shockwave, not too bad. Shockwave side on. Shockwave from the back. The other side. Shockwave top down. Shockwave bottom up. Shockwave standing on his feet and doing a chop down. Very nice. Some nice colours being applied here to Shockwave. So yes, he's primarily purple, but the legs have a nice amount of grey and some dark grey coming through to break up some of that colouring. On his arms, probably more of a black, very dark grey / black. We do have that nice little silver trim around his chest area as well. There's also some of that grey and charcoaly within his main torso. Some lighter grey on his top, and then his head is a nice little combination of purple, silver, and his yellow mono eye. As for his back, you can definitely see a lot of that colour separation between the purple, the grey, the dark grey / black and things like that. So I'd say overall, at least compared to Legacy Shockwave, he definitely has some nice colour presentation, which is very cool. And I think it does break up the aesthetic and look very nicely. So well done to the design team for Transformers Bumblebee Shockwave. So that's a quick look at his colours and his general figureness himself. In terms of articulation, so starting with his head will do a full 360, which is very nice, but that is about it. There's no real up and down movement, and his side to side is obviously because his head can rotate around. So that was his head. In terms of his arms, so they can do a full 360 around, since it's a ball socket as always. The arm will only go out this far on both sides, so these shoulder pads, but not shoulder pads, do actually prevent his arms from going up any further, which is unfortunate, but it's not too bad, especially if you only do that. But his arms will still go all the way to the front and all the way to the back as well, and obviously up. So it's not the end of the world that he can't go further up when he does an arm raise, but he does have options. So that was the joint at the shoulder. He does have full rotation in the upper arm. In terms of a elbow joint, he does have it, but it's a bit of a non-conventional one. So it's more at the side as opposed to your usual elbow where your hand would be more facing, well, more like that. But yeah, so if you try to use it as a traditional elbow, that's basically what you get. Although in saying that, what have I done here? Have I rotated him too much? I've rotated him too much, so I've basically inadvertently misled people. Gosh, he's actually got a lot more rotation than I give him credit for. So looking at his arm, he actually has the rotation up in the upper arm, but he also has the rotation in the lower arm. So there you go. And when I say rotation, I mean he can rotate up here in the upper and then down here in the lower. But it does mean, yes, he actually does have a proper elbow joint. So it can go backwards and it can also go front, but it doesn't do a full 90-degree elbow. It's probably only about 45 degrees at best. His hands are unfortunately have no articulation. So that was his arm. So yes, there we go. Nice little fun part, finding out his arms have a bit more mobility in them than first suspected. So yes, interesting what you can find out when you literally toy around with things. So that was his arms. I'm just gonna try and get them out of the way. In terms of his lower legs, he can only do the splits so far, so we can't do full splits. Similar to his arms, he does have tops of his legs pretty much connecting with his lower torso and preventing any further movement, but his legs will go all the way to the front, all the way, well, almost all the way to the back. For the same reason his full splits is inhibited, some of his front and rear leg movement is also inhibited. Now, as I've been toying around in them, his hip joints do feel a touch on the loose side, but then don't seem too bad. No movement up at the legs. He does have a bit of a knee bend, which is cool. So pretty much just that. So if you're doing forward and back, that's not too bad. So it's probably about more than 45, but I wouldn't say quite 90. But similar to previous other movements, some of his body is pretty much being the inhibitor to further movement. At least his knees feel quite sturdy. And lastly, he will have some movement in his feet, but given that we've seen the instruction booklet, it's pretty much an artifact of some of his transformation. So that's pretty much a nice little rundown of Shockwave in his robot mode. Before I switch over to the transition of his alt mode, I will quickly bring into view Legacy Shockwave. So here we have the two core class Shockwaves together. So a very interesting difference in general aesthetic, if I can actually hold on to them properly without dropping them. So obviously on the left is the Transformers Bumblebee version, and on the right is your Legacy Shockwave, who takes a lot of themes from his Leader Class Siege iteration. Overall, even though they both have their own distinct looks, you can still very much see a very common Shockwave theme, regardless, and not just because of his mono eye. Yeah, it's very interesting to see how two different takes of Shockwave have come about, and yeah, they actually do look very, very cool. So I thought I'd quickly sneak in that before I switch over to the alt mode. In fact, I'll probably do that for both of them, just to do a bit of another compare and contrast. So there we go. So I'll just put one Shockwave to the side, who, by the way, his knees are becoming absolutely atrocious. So I don't know if it's mine or if it's specific to Legacy Shockwave. So not a big fan of that. So Shockwave, I will transform you. Hopefully it won't take half an hour. And then we can have a look at your Cybertron in alt mode, see what it does. Well, not too much to be honest. And then a quick comparison against the Legacy Shockwave, and then I'll do some final thoughts. And with Shockwave now in his Cybertronian tank mode, so not a bad looking tank mode. Now, I have no doubt his actual, I think it might be an actual deluxe version, will probably have a better transformation, but overall it's not too bad looking. So top down on the tank, tank from the front, tank from the side. It actually does have a very nice looking side profile. Now, tank from the back is a bit weird because yes, I do believe that is his head, and yes, I do believe his gun basically connects into the back of it. Yeah, weird. Anyway, other side, his underbelly, which actually isn't too bad. It's generally kibble free. And just another shot from the top down. So, unfortunately, he actually doesn't have any wheels. So Shockwave will not actually have any real form of a proper forward and back motion on account of having wheels on him. He has no wheels, unfortunately. I mean, yes, he's designed to have tank treads, but there's no actual wheels within them to provide any forward and backwards movement, so that's unfortunate. In terms of general articulation, you do have a bit, given that he's, assuming I actually have transformed him correctly, because the turret, the tank turret, I guess, is connected to the back of his head. Thanks to his head having 360 movement, the turret can pretty much go, well, there you go, has pretty much full side to side. Can't really do backwards because it does combine, well, collide with those, but yeah, it's not too bad. It's decent side to side action on that one. A little bit of up and down. That's just mainly on account of the connected piece that's inside the weapon. Still, it's not too bad. Definitely a nice futuristic looking tank. like his robot mode, because he is a nice combination of various colors between the silver, the purple, the greys, the dark grey / black, things like that. It really does add to his general profile and silhouette. So I'd say from a color palette perspective, even in his alt mode, he does look very nice. And if you do get to look at him front on, just some of that, it's not really translucent purple, but that does come through quite nicely. What to say about the tank? I mean, that's pretty much all there is to say about the tank. If I was to grab his alter ego Legacy Shockwave, given that they're both core classes, in terms of general length, Legacy Shockwave is probably slightly longer. Plus he also has a bit of a gun projecting out. I'll also do some picture sets and some short videos with the two together as well, so I'll definitely keep an eye out on that. But yeah, they're not too bad looking. I would say Shockwave on the left visually looks easier to look at than the one on the right, just because there's some additional colors in the palette, where this one is just the two. And I did mention in the unboxing review of Legacy Shockwave that it was unfortunate that with all that detailing and everything, it was restricted to a two-tone color palette. But yeah, that's what the two of them basically look like compared to each other. Very interesting takes on their alternate modes, but yeah, one being very true, well, I take that back, it's not being very true. One being somewhat true to what we've seen Shockwave in the past, and then Shockwave in the movies as of late, well, at least since 2007, has been sporting more of a tank look. Between Transformers Prime, the Bayverse movies, Transformers Bumblebee, and things like that. So, although in saying that, I think Shockwave also does look quite good in a Cybertronian tank mode. So I'll put other Shockwave to the side. So he's had a nice little cameo. Put Shockwave down. In terms of final thoughts, in terms of his robot mode, the color's good. The accessory is quite good as well. Good articulation, although you are limited in certain poses when parts of his body just basically connect with other parts of his body. I did feel, and now that I know that some of his hips has some movement within his transformations, his upper hips did feel a bit, I dare say they felt a little bit stocky. So I don't know if it's because there is part of that transformation in the hips. In fact, you know, these are pretty much the top hips up here, and there's the connection in there. Maybe when I took him out, they could have been a bit more of a tighter connection for his robot mode, which could account on some of the stockiness. Definitely glad he has actual tight knees, unlike the other Shockwave. But overall, his robot mode, I quite liked it. It's a very nice take on his Bumblebee version, and from what I recall, it's fairly on-screen accurate. It's just a shame that it's in core class. Maybe one day we'll get something bigger. So that's some of my thoughts on his robot mode. As for his tank mode, for core class, once again, it's not too bad. It's nice that he's got a bit of that motion in his main turret. The color separation in his in his alt mode do look quite nice. It does make it easier to see his silhouette. Unfortunate that he doesn't have even small little wheels in his treads. I don't think it would have been too difficult. I mean, looking at them, they're also kind of hollow, so they could have added some in, but interesting that they didn't. Quite possibly could be sizing. Not fully convinced about the whole his head pretty much sticks out in the back of his alt mode, but I'm sure in the non-core class version of this that probably has a much more smoother look. The other thing that I thought, it's probably a bit more of a nitpick, so his arms, because of some of that interesting movement in the elbows, does take a little bit of getting used to just align the arms properly so they can connect into, in fact, if I just pop one out, so there's a little tab here that will connect into that, so that will just neatly line that up. But as you can see, it's not very straight with some of them, and I do feel that it's just trying to align these elbow joints and things like that into the perfect alignment so it actually looks more dead straight. But in saying that, I think some of the connections here is actually quite intuitive, because it's just using little tabs and slots to go in. In fact, it's basically all that the legs and the shoulders doing. So there's a tab in the top of the leg, basically just goes into the top of that shoulder bit. So very intuitive in that sense. I actually quite like it. But yes, I think my only nitpick would be just a little bit of effort required just to make that look a bit more straighter on the back legs. I also just realized he's similar to Core Class Wheelie, where his hands just randomly stick out in his vehicle mode. But in saying that, it's a bit more forgiving, because when you look down on them, at least it just looks like it's an extension of the back treads and housing. Sidewise, it's a little bit more noticeable, but it's not too bad. The legs I thought were actually quite cool and funky with the transformation there though. So yeah, so overall, for Core Class Transformers Bumblebee Shockwave, I would say yes, definitely a solid pickup. I think some of the limitations are mainly due to the fact this is a Core Class representation of Shockwave, and there's me bumping things because I can. I know I mentioned earlier I do have the Siege Leader Class Shockwave, which will be on the to-do list in the future, but I do have the, I'm pretty sure it was a deluxe, or am I getting confused with something else? Either way, there's a few Shockwave figures floating around, so this will definitely not be the end of Shockwave. And plus I do want to do the weird Shockwave inception of Siege Leader Shockwave holding Core Class Shockwave. Who knows, maybe riding on a Shockwave instead of his own backpack kibble, but we'll see. Actually, speaking of kibble, no kibble. I thought I'd just quickly get that in there because it's becoming a semi-running joke with what of some of the kits, not kits, some of the figures I've already done reviews for. But yes, going back to what I was saying, I would definitely say if you see him and you're a fan of Shockwave and or Decepticons and or Transformers Bumblebee, in terms of the movie, I would say he's definitely a solid pickup for a core class. He does have that playability. Both his alt mode and his robot mode do look pretty cool. And yeah, I would say definitely pick him up if you can. I've still seen him at local retail here in Australia, so I can't imagine he's being phased out anytime soon. But he was an early 2022 release, so do definitely keep that in mind. I've also noticed these videos just don't seem to get any shorter. So I will pretty much leave that review and unboxing there. Yes, so final thoughts. I do definitely recommend this Core Class Shockwave as a figure to pick up, which is good. Despite some of the little minor nitpicks. That's all good. He's quite solid. And as I hinted at earlier, there will be some picture sets that will be on my Instagram account, and both Instagram and YouTube will have a bit of a 360 turntable of Shockwave to very quickly look at. Thank you very much for watching this unboxing and review of Core Class Shockwave. Feel free to leave a like, a comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the content, all of this does help support the channel, and I do greatly appreciate it. Extra content can also be found on my Instagram account, link below. Stay safe and take care, and I will catch you all in a future video, whether it's Transformers related or another video of other content on my channel. P.S. I haven't decided who the next Transformer unboxing and review is, so who knows. If you have any recommendations and or preferences, feel free to leave a comment. If I have the particular toy and it's in easy access, I will strongly consider it. See ya.